Hey, folks, it is episode, are we at 36? I think we're at 36, right?
That's what it says.
That's the episode this week. All right, and that's it. Have a great weekend. No, just kidding. So, as you can see, we're getting glitches here. And this week, we are focusing on one of those things that we all do, and we all know that we have to do, and we should probably do a little more of, but we don't always get right. And sometimes we feel like it's a lot of extra work with really nothing to show for it. But testing in a number of different ways is super important. And we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about that particular topic today, whether it's security testing, application testing, unit testing, end-to-end testing. You get my drift. You're going to be tested. We're going to be tested. We're going to be testing. All right. And with that, we have a guest with us today. And I just wanted to let you guys know that we're on episode 36. I'm glitching again. Episode 36 of This Week in MeteorJS, a weekly newscast of the Meteor Dispatches podcast, brought to you by the Meteor Community Ambassadors. And actually, today we have 4 Meteor Ambassadors here in the room with us. I'm Alim Gafar, your host from New York.
I'm Dvorak, aka Storyteller, coming live from Prague.
I'm Küster from Germany. Hello.
Kelly from Pennsylvania in the United States.
Hey, Kelly. Kelly's always with us every Friday. He's one of those folks that actually, he is the person that makes sure he kind of like whips everybody into shape, make sure that they show up for the show. And he always has a snarky comment or two to make when he's in the chat. And if you're not in the chat, you're missing out. But this week, you're not going to, because we've got Kelly with us today. And I'm hoping for that snark right here as we go through the program. So, Kelly, thanks for joining us today. Really looking forward to spending time with you. And yeah.
Thanks,
I think what we do normally when we get to this point is we get right to the news. We got a lot of news today about Meteor, don't we?
Oh, yes, we do. So let's get started on that. I think the big news that overrides everything else, it would be an atrocity not to begin with, is that we finally got the release candidates for Meteor 3.0. So yeah, fireworks in the chat, everybody. We're finally getting there. So now I guess we no longer have any excuses to delay any of the migrations and packages or anything else. So the time has come to start moving forward. A release candidate primarily fixes issues from the latest beta, and that's going to be the theme going forward. So you will see these announcements on X, Twitter, and all the other related threads going on. So, get started on your migrations. Be aware there are still some issues. Whenever you get any issues, please report them so that we can fix them, and hopefully we can get a stable release by the end of the month or sooner. It all depends on your feedback. So let's get coding.
That sounds pretty awesome. All right.
Yes.
And I think you got some news from the getting paid file, don't you? Oh, wait. We have news before that, don't we?
Yes. It has been absolutely crazy with releases. And for myself, I still one more release that I wanted to highlight. And that's React 19 beta is out. And there have been for years constantly going on news about all the changes and improvements going to React. We saw some of them in React 18. A lot of them got moved to React 19. So that's finally out. I'm super excited to give it a try over the weekend and see how it impacts my application in Meteor. And there are some interesting capabilities that they are kind of putting on. So I'm hoping it will reduce the number of dependencies I need to have. And I think there might be also potential for improving the Meteor React hooks and other related kind of connectors between Meteor and React. So we'll be keeping a close eye on that. Anybody has already looked at this, wants to comment?
I have one comment, and I will for sure know that there might be a good portion of time I will have to deal with refactoring after they have some breaking changes introduced again.
Actually, that's actually one thing first thing I'm going to test is how much breaking it is, but I am hoping that there won't be any, or at least that's what's the promise. We shall see. One thing, if you want to test that today, is you can use the React strict mode that you wrap around the components you want to test. So that's one way. But with all the breaking changes, that usually means that there is an option for contractors and other people who suggest to make some money. But before that, you can also go and join the Meteor Cloud team or Meteor in general. There are some open positions. There is one for software engineer that got posted 8 days ago. It's a full-time position, primarily working on Meteor Cloud. And I do recall there have been another one, which was part-time, which was working in the community, but I do believe that one has been filled. But sadly, I cannot find the announcement on that, so apologies about that. If you want to be more of a contractor, just one-time wonder, there is from Mike King from Australia. He's looking for some help. Not sure if this is still active because we haven't had an update. But if you're looking for additional opportunities with Meteor, this is another one. So check them out. Send Mike a message if you are interested, and let us know how things go. So with that news, hopefully getting you some money, please like our channel. Let us know, or especially let YouTube know that this is something interesting that more people should be watching. You can find it right below the video, somewhere along there. So that's it, what I want to do. And Jan, you have the other big release this week as well, don't you?
Yes, there is a big release that affects all of us, and not only us in the Meteor community, but all in the Node.js community. There is finally Node.js 22 available. And Jan, you can also share my screen, by the way.
Yes.
And it's actually not LTS yet. Why is that interesting? Because Meteor Software announced quite a while ago that with ongoing development of Meteor 3 and onward, they will stick to the latest Node.js LTS, and 22 will become an LTS by October this year. And it's interesting because Node.js is there since 2009, so it's really matured technology, and still they get it done to have improvements in terms of reliability, in terms of stability, in terms of performance, and even new features like, for example, a new WebSocket. And that might be also useful for us in the Meteor community. I mean, Meteor is based on WebSocket, and let's see how that turns out. Definitely worth a watch here. And they have a compatibility feature in there where you can basically require ESM modules. For those who don't know, usually ESM modules can only be imported with the import syntax, while Node.js had their common JS module loader system using their require. and have also different structure of modules. And this is like a wrapper making everything compatible. This is really in experimental mode. So we definitely have to see how much of this will affect Meteor. Again, it shows that Node.js is still highly in development and moving on.
I'm a little confused about things because I thought that it was preferable to have import because, we've got these two different ways of loading information, right? I mean, we have the Node common JS way, but for a very long time, JavaScript itself was using imports, and it seemed that was supposed to be where we wanted to head. So I'm confused as to why we want to go back to require.
I can go into that a little bit. So basically, we as the Meteor community, we were very in a comfort zone thanks to Meteor and thanks to tools like Reify. We could just decided whether we wanted to use require or import.
Right.
And when Meteor builds things, it was compiled, basically built under the hood to whatever it was necessary, usually on the server with require.
Okay.
And on the client, I don't even know how it's resolved on the client, but somehow like a patched version of require CommonJS patched module system there. And this is mostly important from that point of view that the native Node.js was always using require and only supported ES modules since, I think, version 16. So, but there are still projects that run legacy code or that are having a hard time for refactoring. And for them, this is really useful because they could try to support ES modules, but still slowly progress. And when we talk about migrating, about progressing, this is also a wake-up call to anybody out there in the Meteor community. Node.js 22 is 8 versions apart from Node.js 14, which is basically the version that Meteor 2.x is using. So it's really time. If you still have 2.x apps running, it's really time.
I would say so. All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for helping me understand that a little better. I'm not suggesting at all that I understand it well, but at least I get a sense of where it is. We'll talk about this a little more offline.
Yeah. And so let's get back a little bit to the MeteorJS community packages. So last time I announced already that there were some big changes, big updates in the Meteor community packages. And for those who haven't seen this or heard this again, one of the most important packages like LD Collection 2, Mongo Collection instances, which builds upon collection extensions, but also Meteor React Native, which is not directly in the Meteor community packages, but its own organization, but it's under our maintenance basically. And also the Meteor TypeScript, the community managed TypeScript, time sync and roles, they all have updates recently. We have now much better support for 3.0. Some of them are already RC compatible. And in the recent days, after I published that, a few people picked up, especially Harry. So thanks to Harry again, who is currently very active in the Meteor community packages. Harry contributed to a few more packages here, like he made Collection 2 finally 3.0 RC compatible, but also TMSD check NPM versions, which is also a dependency of many other packages. That was this meta level package that helped you to define some kind of NPM dependency without declaring it as a hard dependency. So you could have let the users decide which dependency to install via NPM, but you could define like a soft layer of, okay, it must have major version 1 or major version 2 or whatever. And this is also now 3.0 compatible. And Storyteller also added some updates. We have now Meteor browser tests, which is part of the Meteor Mocha, also updated. And I'll need schema index, which is part of simple schema and also indirectly of autoform. So we are currently really firing new releases, and this will be ongoing for a while now because everything gets smoother and smoother with the updates. I don't have any issues anymore with the updates, so I think keep an eye on this thread. There will be some more updates posted in the future.
Well, Jan, just you wait until we get into the packages that we haven't touched in a while and a bit more behind.
Yeah, there are still two or three blockers. Oh, I forgot to add. Yeah, I also released an autoform version 8. So if anyone is, it's an RC of version 8. I know that autoform is still a very widespread package in the Blaze community, and that was really a struggle. And there are still things in the pipeline, especially older packages, that are still a challenge, yeah, I would say.
Speaking of packages and pipeline, Kelly, I remember you mentioned that you want to look on some of the, say, more technical packages like Fast Renderer. Is that still in plans? Oh, did we look? No, there he is.
Sorry, guys, had an issue with my dog. Yeah, so I'm hoping that I'll be able to start working on all of those packages here in the next couple weeks.
Awesome. So yeah, we have a lot of stuff coming in, but now we are getting into the meat or theme, or however you want to name it, of today's episode, which is testing. So first of all, everybody in the chat, are you testing your applications? What tests are you using? And maybe some highlights or nightmares. Let us know. I'm using Cypress for end-to-end testing, but I'm just very beginning and it's not going well, but more on that later. First of all, let's switch to my screen and look on a resource that I can use. This is more of a higher level resource if you are in corporation, especially the first few say checklist items here are going to be perfect for you. So this is a checklist of how you should start or take an approach to API security testing. But I would say this kind of applies to all of the tests in general. As I said, the first three are more if you want to have very formal, especially the first two. So who is responsible? Budget. Make sure you have the times for testing and security testing especially, and then if you are in more corporate world, register, classify, and document the purpose of each API, and in our case also applied to tests. So, and here I kind of want to pause for a moment, because when you talk about API, usually we just think about just normal HTTP GET requests or REST APIs. But you should also remember that GraphQL can be accessed from outside your application. The same thing goes for DDP. All the things that send data or receive data from the client, or even from other servers, that can be accessed. So that should be tested, or it should have all the checks and to make sure that you don't have people sending bad data or people trying to access resources that they should not have access to. So that's important to have big overview. And of course, then we have the usual mantra, just early, automate as much as possible. And here I really like the definition of types of the tests to run. So it's good to realize, okay, what can be, what can we do for bad things to this, endpoint or to this test? So, invalid inputs, injection attacks, parameter tampering, and so on. Of course, don't forget business logic vulnerability. That's the main part. Authentication, as I mentioned, and a big one, which it's kind of, I would say, the next level of testing is what happens when it's excessive load. So when you get under DDoS attack. And hopefully everything else that's kind of normal. It's just, fixed tests that fail and retest. We want to see the green check marks. And my kind of personal pet peeves, stay current with security risk and update documentation. I would add to this also update dependencies. So for Node, for my dependencies, I have the shortcut is NCU, but even now NPM as well can do an audit or look if there are any new versions of the packages. It's especially now here in open source with the recent breaches and everything, it's important to know what are your dependencies, what are they doing, how are they developing, or even not developing, so that you know that, okay, this one has, the developer has left, I need to find something that can stay up to date with the security threats. So that's going all into all these additional things that you need to do around software and open source especially. So those are here 7, let's say, checklists that in this article were written as security testing best practices, but I think they can be applied in general for testing as well. I think, Alan, we should probably start coming up with our own checklists and make, clickbaity articles as well.
Sure.
With these.
I think you could come up with many different types of checklists. Maybe we should have a checklist every week.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Checklist. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. What do we have next, Alim, now?
Well, I don't know. This is something that we missed before, but back in March, there was a release of VS Code that went out, which now has a feature that they had been working on for a while, which they made feature complete, which is a test coverage API. And the neat thing about this, and it's only available right now for Node, which is good for us, and for Java. But what it does is it's got support so that what it does is it looks at your code, and then it's able to figure out what code that you've written that you have coverage for in unit tests. And what does it say here? It says by identifying lines of code that are exercised by unit tests and which are not. So it's able to isolate and let you know those parts of the code that you don't have test coverage for. And I thought this was kind of a really neat and interesting tool. I don't know of anybody in my immediate orbit that's actually tried it, used it, and is using it. So if any of you guys in the chat have tried it, know about it, and have been using it, you are better than me for a number of different reasons, but specifically for this one. And I don't know. Have you guys seen this before?
Not really. This is the first time I'm seeing it like this.
To me, this is kind of cool. I mean, here's the thing. VS Code is free, and they keep adding really, really good and useful things to it, and it's still free. So I'm not sure what data they're collecting on me when I use it, but somehow or the other, they're able to milk that and get money out of it so that I can have this thing for free. I don't know if you guys think about this at night. I don't sleep well because of it, but
I mean, it's Microsoft. They have there is money from every direction coming in for them. This is not a big spending, I think.
They don't need your data. They own all your code.
That's true too.
Well,
because
they own GitHub as well, yeah. So
are we the microserfs to Microsoft?
Yes.
Is that how this works?
So
well, they feed out the information to OpenAI, so I'll just 3 dots there.
Yeah, but it's like ... let it just go. Let it just go. Hey guys,
I think
I was gonna say, and I might be repeating a little bit of Jan beforehand, but if you are liking these conversations, you would like to see more content like this produced, please hit that like button so that we get recognized by the YouTube algorithm, and then we get recommended to more people. And if more people come, we get to build our community, and Meteor is not just this place in the dark anymore. It's kind of cool that, I don't know if I told you, I found this visualization of different front end and back end technology. Well, it was 4 back end technologies over time from 2012 to 2024 that showed where Meteor was in all of this. Did you guys? I think I sent it to you two, Jans. Did you watch it? It was pretty cool. I mean, Meteor, you know, I didn't realize just how popular Meteor was at one point. Meteor between I think it was 2014 and 2017 was the #2 most popular framework in the world. It's just
Well deserved.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, you know, this is one of those things where the team that had it before shot themselves in the foot and took, you know, let a good thing go bad. But there's still a lot of good with Meteor. And I think it's time it gets its resurgence. We're at 3.0. And I think if we keep pushing with this, we're going to see something of a renaissance. I hope. But that's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing this. And if you guys are in for this and you want to be part of that rising wave, hit that like button, subscribe, get to know this channel, get to know the people that are part of the community. All right, with that, I'm moving on. So Kelly, you're here with us today, and you're here because you're generous with your time, and you like us, I think.
Oh, absolutely, love you guys.
But the other part too is every day that you're on here, every Friday that you come on, you beat the drum on TypeScript. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit of a TypeScript advocate, I'd say. Yeah,
and so we really wanted you here because, you know, we feel like you need to convince me, and I think you probably can. It's just like having that extra bit of infrastructure in place, right? I've got to write something in one thing and get transpiled to JavaScript. I've got to have a transpiler in the middle there. It's just more stuff. I mean, tell me why. Tell me about TypeScript. You know,
I mean,
what's the whole thing behind TypeScript? You know, from start to finish here. Like, let's just go through it. You know,
honestly,
go ahead.
As far as compilers go, I mean, we're already doing that anyway. We're every time that you hit save in your Meteor build and you're running the Meteor command, it's already compiling things. So we already have that sort of build step basically built in, no matter what you're using, Meteor, Next.js. You know, we have those tools in place, and you know, so that argument has always sort of been like, are we really going to say that like that's an issue? Because
why don't we do this? Because I think there are plenty of people that do know what TypeScript is, but there are plenty of people that don't. So why don't we take it from the top,
sure.
And then we'll get into, like, you know, Alim's little pet peeve later on. We can kind of like hammer that down.
All right.
Why don't we teach the people something so that way, and I'll learn something along the way too.
All right. So TypeScript is just a superset of JavaScript. It's sort of like a almost like a type runtime on top of JavaScript in the compilation phase. And so it helps you to statically analyze your code, and in the process relieves a lot of bugs that you would normally get at runtime during the writing of your code, rather than finding them later when they're really inconvenient. So it was originally built, it was built by Microsoft by Anders Hallberg, I think in like 2012.
Okay.
It's currently at 5.4.5. Yeah, so I mean, is
Microsoft still maintaining it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So they haven't like moved it to a foundation or some other, you know, organization, a steering committee, or anything like that. It's
Not
really small.
Alim, this is Microsoft. They don't let anything go.
The thing is, there is some work on sort of standardizing a typed superset of JavaScript. I think that's going through the TC39 now.
Okay.
I'm not sure where that's going to go, but I think that it'll probably wind up looking a lot like TypeScript. So, but yeah, nothing on Microsoft giving up their baby at this point.
Yeah. Wait. Let me just understand what you just said. Are you saying that the TC39 is looking into adding types?
Correct.
To strict types to JavaScript?
Yeah, similar to what TypeScript does. And basically it would just allow static analysis, and then the runtime would just strip them out.
Okay. All right. Interesting. So what's this slide about? I'm a little blind. I apologize. Okay. Oh, it looks cool. All
Just
right.
showing the official website here, how they,
All right.
advertise it.
So, for people that are writing their code, right? What's the whole point behind it? Like, I mean, it feels like you got to write a lot more now, doesn't it?
I mean, honestly, so if you're using tons of annotations in your code, you're probably writing your TypeScript wrong. TypeScript, for the most part, should, like, most of the types should, like, the very the types that are really hard to write should come from the libraries that you use. Your library authors should be doing the hard work, and your code should reap the benefits of that through inference. And so that's an experience that's available today. Like, it's not something that developers need to wrestle with. For the most part, most libraries are really great with their types, and you write very little actual TypeScript unless you're writing sort of the foundational elements of something in your application, and then you may write some types. But for the most part, you're going to get inference from the libraries that you use, and you won't have to deal with it that much. It'll be minor annotations on top of your code.
Yeah, but I guess the benefit from it, from what you're implying, is that even though you might have a small inconvenience from this, it actually makes debugging and reasoning about code a little easier, right? Or a little more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I really enjoy about TypeScript is refactoring. Like, when I go to refactor, just knowing that my language server knows more about my code than I do, and being able to refactor confidently across the entire code base without going, wait, where is this in use? Like, what type is this? So I think that's a really important thing. It catches a lot of bugs, and for the most part allows me to work faster. There are some instances where you end up stuck in TypeScript, and it can be frustrating, and it can slow you down in those instances. But I think for the most part, it's a definite productivity booster in the long run.
And
I think one of the really nice things for a lot of people, I guess, with JavaScript and languages like that, where you don't have strict typing, is that you have automatic casting, right? But that can be a problem too. For instance, I mean, you may have some code that returns, an int or an array of ints, right? And so instead of getting a one element array returned, sometimes you get an int and sometimes you get an array. And if your code is looking for a specific type or expecting a specific type, you can get screwed real quickly.
Absolutely.
By something like that, right?
And
obviously, go ahead.
The funny thing about that is I used to act like as like a sort of blossoming developer. I would, like in JavaScript, I would do that. I would have a string and then I would make it an int or something, just something really ridiculous that didn't need to happen. But because it was dynamic like that and I could just assign things, it just, you know, I would do that. And that's another thing about TypeScript is it forces you sort of to be a better developer.
Yeah, I mean, you end up doing things like when stuff like that happens, where you've got an int back, but then you get an array. It's then you just cast everything to a string, and then you just like loop over it, right? But it's wrong. I mean, there's so many other issues that could come up from stuff like that.
Correct.
So that's kind of interesting. So do you think that, you know, working with things that are explicit, I don't want to say strictly, because because that infers that there is, you know, some type mechanism that's really making sure that you're adhering to the types. But my understanding is that that's really not what's happening. It's just making it explicit, right? Because underneath it all, the JavaScript is still a dynamically typed language. That hasn't changed. It's just we're just kind of like putting, you know, a wrapper around the things that we're putting into our variables, right?
Absolutely. And that's another sort of gotcha about TypeScript that I would say sort of gets a lot of people, is that you can lie to TypeScript. You can tell it wrong information and then it'll give you wrong information. You know, it's the old garbage in, garbage out. And so one instance right now that I sort of wrestle with Meteor is the fact that the collections, if you tell it to only give me back, say, you know, 2 fields, and there's 20 fields on the collection, and you've given the type to the collection through passing it its type parameter, it will return those 2 fields, but the return type on that collection, TypeScript sees it as having all of the available fields from that collection, and so it's a lie, you know. So that's one thing with TypeScript, is that they're like, if you aren't strict with how you set your types up, you can lie to TypeScript, and TypeScript will then lie to you and other people if you share that code, or you're, you know, you're developing on a team. So you kind of have to watch what you tell TypeScript. So, and that's where inference comes in a lot too. So if you, the more you can infer, or let TypeScript infer, the better.
Sounds kind of gnarly, man.
I mean, JavaScript is gnarly. It was built in 10 days.
That's true.
And,
JavaScript,
you know, we've
gnarly.
been wrestling with it ever since. So
yeah, you would think that it just seems to me, actually, with JavaScript, that the steering committee, whoever, the people that are responsible for upgrading and maintaining the language, have a chance every single time to go back in and make some real fixes, and they don't. They're like,
well,
you know, let's just leave it the way it is. And I'm sure part of it is just backward compatibility, because, you know, if you go in and say, okay, you know what, we're going to enforce so that an int is an int is an int, right? And this is what it looks like, and a float is this, and you can't just swap out you know, different types in your variables once you declare them. It'll probably break some old code. But wasn't there a flag at one time for JavaScript for like a strict mode or something like that?
There's constantly something like that. You had also this. You have similar stuff with HTML as well.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if there's just some way
there is a use strict in JavaScript, but it doesn't apply to types.
No. But my point, though, is that because they have implemented something like that in the past, couldn't they do that for types?
Yeah.
You know, I think it might be a way to kind of like move it into you know, a safer language to use. So, you know, does it matter if your code is explicitly typed in? Okay, so we already talked about that. And so is it difficult from your point of view, is it difficult to learn TypeScript? And when you talk about whether or not it's difficult or not, couch it in the like where somebody might be in their JavaScript journey.
Yeah. Honestly, I personally did not find TypeScript to be that hard to learn. There are hard parts. When you get into generics and a lot of the type inference that comes with generics, that those parts can be very difficult. But again, those should be left to library authors and things like that. And if everyday usage of TypeScript is not going to get into that, so I think that you can probably pick up basic TypeScript usage in an afternoon if you've used JavaScript before.
Okay, I think you're assuming a lot about me, but that's okay. We'll give that a try and see how that goes. So now, from what I get so far from TypeScript is you've said that TypeScript is a superset to JavaScript. So underneath all of this is JavaScript.
Right.
And you can write JavaScript you could write TypeScript with JavaScript. Basically, you are doing that. So JavaScript kind of like it's almost like a decorator on top of JavaScript.
Yes and no. I like to think of TypeScript as sort of two paradigms. When you're just using TypeScript for the annotations, then it's a decorator. But there's also almost a type runtime underneath that that does automagical things when you use TypeScript for the hard parts. And so normally you're probably just using the decorator parts, but when you're doing the type inference and you're using generics, generic types, generic functions, there's almost a runtime underneath that does magic things that once you learn that, it's just like, wow.
Okay. So I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you have any like bits of code or something that you could show us that you could share that might help us understand that a little better?
Honestly, not offhand. No, I'm definitely not prepared for that.
That's all right. That's all right.
Honestly, if you're looking to get into the nitty-gritty of TypeScript,
we're kind of abstract right now. That's why I was just trying to make it concrete in some way.
Yeah. So I mean, anything with like if you search for generic functions or generic types in TypeScript, you'll find that when you do that, there's things under the hood. When you get into map types, it's almost running code to create your types. And so it's almost like there's a runtime underneath which runs these type annotations and turns them into different things. And it's really hard to wrap your head around when you first get started. Like this is actually doing something, but the under the hood TypeScript is sort of a runtime. It's an inference engine, and you sort of tell it how you want the type to be, and then it makes that type through inference.
So I think it just kind of from this is this like for example in React, once I define that it's a functional component and I pass in the brackets the properties, that is that what you're talking about? Because then of course there are additional properties, just like children, or actually you have to pass them manually as well, but like additional properties that are added there automatically based on the type of, for example, the HTML element, and you can then define some extra. Would that be let me see if I can get a quick sample of what you're talking about, or for example, since we've talked already about the collections, you don't have to, when you are like doing types for your documents and all that stuff, you don't have to, for example, define the underscore ID or similar, because that's kind of given by default because it's part of the collection interface or whatever you would call it. Is that kind of correct assumption?
Yes. In some instances, yeah. The one that I like to sort of think about when I think of that it's sort of a runtime under the hood is the fact that you can give it a template string and then pass a union to that template string, and then it will infer all of the types for that template string as being, so if you had say you were using Tailwind, for instance, and there was something, you had classes that had colors or whatever, and so there would be like a gray 100, and then so you have your types in your TypeScript, you could give it a union of all of the different numbers and then the colors, and you could compile all of those different unions of both the colors, say you have blue, green, gray, and then the numbers, and then it would compile a type that was a combination of all of the different colors and numbers, and you could get a type back. So it's running something under the hood to compile like a new type from all of those other types.
I think I know what I think I know. Well, I think I know what you mean. I'm using this in my application here.
Can you scale up a little bit, please?
It's already like 150%.
I think we are all getting old.
So this is 200%. So is this like, for example, here I have global roles defined. And then in order like to get, for example, the list of possible roles and, or the keys, I have here kind of, I could say these, key of, type of, and kind of this set of a functionality that extracts that information from the object, so that when then I have a function that, let's just call it role test, that then is to receive like a, say global role, then I here then define roles global values. I'll just say a Boolean. It will be returned Boolean, but that can be inferred once I finish it. So then, when I do here, global role, and I do the equal, and let's just say I do, it will immediately offer me the list of the options that are possible here, because let's just true, false, so it's happy, because that's kind of already from this function, it knows and what it is. And if I add something to this object, it will automatically propagate, so I don't have to have like additional type where I need to then add it every time. Or for example, if I then make this something different, it will tell me, no, this is wrong, this doesn't exist as a value, so you cannot use it.
Right. So now up above your function there, create a new template string.
Okay, template string.
Above the function.
Okay.
And, just assign it to a variable, and then use the variable in the template. Yeah.
So like that, or?
So use your roles global keys there.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, that's a type. I'm sorry. That's not.
That's that. So.
Oh, honestly, I think that should actually, will that work? So hover over your test string there and see what you got there. Never. Okay. So.
It's just because I'm not using it anywhere. So.
Right. Oh.
Just put it here, and so it will tell me it's a string. But in this case, since it's type already, then it would not.
So
I think we have some other input to get what you mean. But you can as you said, you can see that in Tailwind with giving you hints of all the possible inputs.
yeah, absolutely. So I mean, maybe, yeah, I'll have to put something together and maybe put it in Slack or whatever, demonstration of what I mean here.
Sure.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you, Kelly, for giving me some information here. Obviously, I've got some thinking to do, but did you have some other questions or any other comments that you wanted to bring it up in here? I think we had in the open discussion section, some material.
I've asked everything I needed. Jan?
Yeah, I did some chatting around here.
I
No,
think
I've
this is in the wrong place. Go
for
ahead.
me, it's rather my question would be, Kelly, do you think, or let's say, do you know, or do you think that just by using TypeScript, you already have to write less tests?
I wouldn't say, well, yeah, I guess I would say yes. You
Mhm.
probably get away with writing less tests.
Mhm.
Do you have to write less tests? No, it's probably a good thing to continue writing all of those tests. But if you were to have to choose between writing your unit tests and writing TypeScript, I would say that TypeScript would save you a lot more bugs than writing unit tests. So I think that if you had to, you could probably get away with using TypeScript and get by without writing your unit tests. I definitely do not recommend that, though.
Yikes.
Yeah, as I wrote in the chat, who is actually writing no tests? Because YOLO, who is out there?
I saw that. That is so funny. But they're probably like, look, I mean, there are probably plenty of times where people are not writing tests. If you're writing a small application and you're strapped for time, and it's likely that you're going to be the only user, you might get away with not writing some tests. And I think we've all done that, right? We've all written code where we haven't written any tests because it's just, okay, this is one off. And sometimes that one-off code lasts a little longer than you think. Sometimes, like 10 years later, you come back and you see that it's still running. And maybe it should probably use some tests at that point, but
It's somebody else's problem at that point.
it probably is somebody else's problem at that point. Exactly. So,
And you're probably dealing with somebody else's problem that they left you.
Man, oh man, isn't that the way the world works, right?
If you're working in any kind of code base, like large code base anyway, that survived any amount of time, you're probably dealing with somebody else's code that they were like, whatever. I'll come back to this.
And there's always that, right? That's part of the issue, is that if it's not planned for at the outset, then it becomes an option. And really, I think what we discover in a lot of things that we see in terms of products that we've used, vehicles that go underneath other vehicles when they really should be like stopping, things like that, tells us that testing matters, right?
And
having
that
good
also
tests
tells
matter.
me that no matter how much you test, you're still going to have bugs.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
I mean, you know that company that had that self-driving car that went underneath another car when it was supposed to stop. They probably had lots of tests, but
Oh, sure.
you can't
Sure.
foresee everything, unfortunately.
No. There we can get into a whole philosophical discussion about, some of the underlying viewpoints that certain people in that company have about reality, that might shape the way they do things. But I don't think that we really want to get into that right now, because we've got other things to talk about. And that's more like, as they used to say in college, beer and bullshit session, right? It's that's what you break it out for. But having said that, I think we still have some stuff to go over, don't we? Yeah.
Indeed,
All
our
right.
main topic, you could say. Picking up testing or not testing.
Well, we're doing that, but I think we're now done with this part of the discussion. Kelly, you're going to stick around, right? You're going to give us some comments.
Sure.
Give us your feedback, your thoughts as we go through this. I think we're supposed to get onto things that help you grow as a developer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. So before we go totally deep into the testing, and I will get out my microscope to find all the issues in the code, let's quickly jump into some CFPs and conferences, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. So Jan, can you activate my screen sharing? So today I'm only covering a few, but the most upcoming one, or the closest deadlines, in case you are still undecided. There is Open Source Summit from the Linux Foundation. So if there's anything that is to you important in regards to open source, and you have anything to say about that, this is the conference you're looking for, definitely. And the CFP closes next week on Tuesday, on 30th of April. And while this is a live event, there's also another CFP closing on the same date, and that's for the for the Front End Nation, which is an free online event, which is awesome, because we all know conferences can be expensive. And if you are looking for a free and online event, this is the one. And this has still a CFP open until 30th. And since front-end technologies is what is also very integrative with Meteor, maybe there's some topic you want to talk about. I don't know, maybe integrating Meteor with some front end that we haven't seen before, or very, very experimental new stuff. Who knows? And then I would like to let you all know that we have GitHub Universe upcoming, and the CFPs are open, and they're closing on May 10th, so this is a little bit in the future, but they are open, the CFPs, and they have 3 main tracks. It's AI, security, and developer experience. And I mean, these are the 3 hot topics of the time, of course. And we all know the stakes are really high for this conference, but still, if you're brave enough and you think you have a good topic, they have great guidelines out there. Here's some helpful info on the bottom. They have guidelines on what you should put into your CFPs. And trust me, from the quality perspective, this is the same as if you're submitting a CFP to any other high-level scientific conference or something like this. So do not hesitate to try. The worst that can get out is getting rejected. And the best that could come out is being a speaker at GitHub Universe. I mean, how awesome would that be, right? So,
damn awesome.
Yeah. And I'm myself not submitting yet, but I'm definitely planning in the future on submitting of one of the higher level targeted conferences. I'm still looking for some topics that might be definitely interesting, that beyond the everyday coding stuff. And once I have a little bit more free time at work, I will definitely target for something big. And maybe there will be one shot that I'm accepted. Why not? Right? And actually, the next section on conferences should be Jan's, but I think he just disappeared into the void. What happened?
Did?
Yeah. Oh, there he is back.
Yeah, apologies for that. It's my turn now.
Yeah.
Sweet, just perfect for crash. So let me get right on it. Today I will be similar like I'm just picking up 3 events that are coming up in May. And I am starting here with SIA World Interact. Let me just scroll to my notes. That will be in Orlando, Florida, May 6 to 8. And I accidentally, let's see. And then, so yeah, that's, so if you are in that part of the world, definitely, check it out. As you can see, just already everybody is going all bonanza about AI. But if you are more in the colder parts of America, starting on April 29th and going till May 3rd, so next week, we have Visual Studio Live. So that one is in close partnership with Microsoft. It's in Chicago. So jazz, and I would say maybe still a bit of a cold, but it's America, so it's not going to be that cold as in Canada. So that's also happening. And then from my part of the woods, we have Web Expo 2024, May 29th to 31st here in Prague. So you feel free to comment that one. That one is more on the prices. It's a freaking huge event when it comes to web development, probably like the premier web development event here in Czechia, but it's completely, maybe with the exception in English, or at least for the big parts. So that's all there, and a lot of different topics. I do recall I've been there a few years back. So there was the creator of Vercel, and Next.js was there. So quite a big deal. To also kind of give you quick more bonuses or kind of announcement of an announcement coming down soon. I have 3 events potentially coming up. If I'm thinking of going, I'll just say to the beach, to the beautiful Cyprus, because I got invitation there for the Reflect Festival going here. So if I decide to go to that instead of Web Expo, because I want to pay for that, that might be happening there, and I will probably going for a little bit longer. So if you're in Cyprus, let me know, and we can probably organize some sort of a Meteor meetup. And we have 2 more in June. We are working to get a meetup in Poland, and somewhere in between all these, I want to also get a meetup in Czechia, and we are exploring venues for that. So that's more on that coming in the, I'd say, next 2 weeks or so, once we finalize more things together.
Very cool. All right. And where are we now? I'm a little behind. Oh, we've got the shout outs.
Yeah. So first of all, who or did you guys did you heard of this Marble AR tool which is developed by one of our community members?
Yep.
Yep.
I have. I think the cool thing here about what you're going to talk about here is we have one of the great things about Meteor is that it's multi-platform, right?
Yeah.
You can build applications for the web. You can build mobile applications with either Cordova or React Native. And you can also build Electron apps. And it seems that somebody has figured out how to build for another platform.
Yes. So this Marble AR tool, or the Marbleverse, is basically coming to the AppleVision Pro. So it's basically the first Meteor app on the AppleVision Pro, right?
As
And
far as we know.
As far as we know. And
Yep.
this is pretty cool. I mean, it's not that long that it's out there, and we already have a Meteor app that is working for it. And so from what I've seen in the forum posts, this is Meteor backed, of course, because this is the same as with Meteor React Native, for example. So in the front end, you have totally different. You have to use the SDK and everything that is designed for this AppleVision Pro in that case. But the whole back end and the communication is all DDP and communicating with Meteor in the back end. And this is really awesome. I mean, that shows that this is not only a well-established technology, but it's actually capable of so many things to be integrated. And if you haven't used Marble AR, by the way, you can just download the app also for Android and iOS and just try it out for free. This is it's a little bit mix of geocaching style, placing memories on the map, and just give it a try. And maybe if you have an AppleVision Pro, you can even experience it in more in depth. And one thing, to get back to the development side of things, the creator of the application asked also about a C#, I think, or some kind of SDK for the Meteor integration. And I think that they finally found a solution for that, and this is really awesome. So there's an older forum post where they actually struggled with that and first wanted to try if this is possible with simple DDP and something, but that didn't work out quite well. And now they found, for this Vision OS, that's the name of the OS, found a solution for that, and that's really cool.
Very cool. All right. I'm trying to fix my lens here, but I'm not getting any headway one way or the other here. So I think we're up to something that I'm supposed to be talking about now, aren't we?
Yes.
Huh. All right. So hold on to your pants, everybody. All right. Because I'm going to bring up a forum post that has been out there for a bit. Written by our friend Felipe Nevola. Okay, Meteor 3 is coming, and you can learn from me as your mentor. And when he wrote this, I didn't think very much of it. I mean, I thought, okay, this is great. He's creating an opportunity for people who might want to learn from him. He's a very knowledgeable guy. He used to be the developer advocate for Meteor many years ago, and then he became CEO for a while. And he's gone back to Quave and is working there. And, what he offered, I had no problem with. But this post seemed to have, what's this? AI proof day?
Yeah, that's the course he's been.
Oh, okay. So it seemed to spark a lot of, I guess, misgivings that people had about the post. And I wondered about this. Some people were asking whether or not he was trying to get free labor. He said, no, that's not really what it is. It's, I'm going to be working on something and I'm going to be teaching something else. And I don't think the messaging was entirely clear. So, in defense of the people that were getting a little bent out of shape over it, and I will say it's being bent out of shape. I think that there's an issue there, and I agree, by the way, if anybody's paying somebody else and they're using the folks that they're teaching as labor on a commercial project, that I think has some ethical issues. But I don't think that's what was going on here. And I think, what he's offering, or what he was offering, was to, help build up some skills. What I would like to see more of, and I don't see much of it here anymore, is more of an offer of people that are willing to teach, are willing to mentor and to help folks that are coming in. There are young folks that come in, and when I say young, I don't mean necessarily chronological age, but I mean that in the sense of their professional development as developers, as engineers, that really do need some guidance, need some help, and might be a little shy about asking for it, but they'll pay for a course. I remember when React Native was new, and there were a couple of guys from the Meteor New York community that built one of the first React Native courses, and they talked about, they shared it. I'm not even sure if they mentioned it in on the forums. They may have, and people went there and they paid to use it, and they learned something from it. Those guys that spent a lot of effort building a course got paid for their work, and I don't have a problem with that. I feel that we have a scarcity of knowledge transfer in the community in a structured way. There is knowledge transfer in the form of notes that go into these forums and exchanges that happen in Slack, but we're not seeing many articles being written anymore. It would be really nice if we're seeing that. We're not seeing courses being done. We're not seeing instructional video being made much anymore. So we're at a deficit. And if anybody steps up and says, hey, I can do this, but I also need to get compensated for it, I think we should be encouraging it. Now, having said that, I know I'm stirring the pot, and that's fine. So if you want to continue this conversation in that thread, we could do that. You could do it here on the not in the forums, but on the chat. And let us know what your thoughts are, and let us know why you feel strongly one way or the other. And if it's partly because you don't feel that you have agency to make the same kind of offer, I would say you do. If you feel that way, that's one thing. But if you feel like you're going to get slapped if you do it, I'd do it. I'm one of the admins on the forums, and I can put up a post, I could take it down. So to me, if you are offering and you're doing it, you're doing it with all the good intentions, I don't see any reason why we should be doing this. We need to get more material out. We need to get more engagement, so that people know that if there's a resource that they need, they can get to it. And I'm going to hit on a subtopics I'm coming to in a couple of minutes. There were some Reddit posts. I go to the Meteor Reddit subreddit every now and then, and I notice that there are people that are there. Some of them are saying they can't find Meteor devs. Seems like they're in the wrong place. But I think that's part and parcel of the whole issue here, is that it's hard to discover people that have expertise that can share it with you. And how do you approach them? How do you get in touch with them? How do you let them know that you need? And at the same time, if you're on the other side and you have those skills, how do you let other people know about it? So I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, I've said my piece here, and I'm sure that you have some opinions.
So
Come on, Kelly. Kelly, we didn't bring you here to be shy. We didn't bring you here to be the wallflower today, brother.
Yeah, I'm honestly with getting paid for the courses and stuff, like that's like, I don't, as long as he's not using developers, like young inexperienced developers, and having them do work, I think that's perfectly fine. Like if you create a course, you put a lot of hard work into that, and so you should definitely get paid for that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's a constant struggle to update these learning resources, and so if you're not getting compensated, it's usually that they get outdated because you will not touch them. So I think if there is some kind of a business you can build around it that keeps you also going, and constantly make people learn with the newest information, then that's okay. And as you said, I totally agree. As long as it's not it's not hidden labor or trying to avoid tax paying or something like this. If that's a legitimate business, then it's cool.
I agree, though, that the post itself was kind of confusing in the way it was structured and worded. So
Yeah.
Yeah, there was some like, what's going on here, but
yeah,
I think, I mean, it's Felipe. He's on the up and up, I think.
I mean, Felipe has given a lot to this. In addition to being paid, I mean, he still gives quite a bit. I think that there is a little bit of a I remember somebody commenting to me once and said, Felipe does give back, but it's in Quave packages. It's always, it's in Quave controlled, Quave owned items. And so that's why they were like a little reticent in terms of some of this. But, I got to tell you, man, I mean, what does it matter, right? As long as the community benefits at the end of the day.
And he's not getting paid for the packages, right? They're open source.
A lot of them are open source. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and he's not charging anything for that. So I would consider that giving back quite a bit, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, it's just like, all right, well, ensuring that he gets credit, right? Like if he's wrapping it in a namespace that he has some control over. But I think we could take it one way or the other. I mean, we could take it based on how we feel about him or what our experiences are. I noticed that some of the posts were kind of negative and were kind of, they sort of implied like bad intentions. And I hope we don't get to the point where we're finding bad intentions in each other, because this community will fall apart really quickly if we go down that path. I think I think everybody that's here that loves Meteor, that enjoys using it, yes, we're like, we live in a nice neighborhood, all of us. We like the neighborhood, but we also have our own ideas of how we want our yards to look, right? And how we think our neighbors' yards should look, right? That's what it is at the end of the day. But if you think about it, like, all right, we all want good things, but let's start thinking about each other as like, okay, well, that person is not, letting his lawn grow because he wants the place to look bad. Maybe it's because he's got a goat that's coming in, and that's how he's going to like take care of the goat. He's got his own idea about how he should use his yard, right? So, he doesn't necessarily want a landscaped yard like yours. He's like a nature freak or something. I think we just have to be able to accommodate each other a little more. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think I'm being, too rough on this, or do you think I'm reading this wrong?
If your neighbor wants to grow wildflowers in their yard, grow wildflowers.
Exactly.
And
do your thing.
Actually, I have a strong opinion on your yard. I definitely want your yard. I definitely want your yard to be tested in order for me to look at it, right? So otherwise, I'm not interested in your yard.
Fair. All right. I have a little difficulty today with so we're going on, by the way, I guess all of you guys know by now that we're being sponsored by Galaxy for one of our segments. We have a segment called Understanding Meteor. We spend a lot of time trying to figure out, what is useful that we could take to you and share with you. And so this week on Understanding Meteor, we're going to talk a little bit more about testing in Meteor and testing with JavaScript in general. So I had a nice video, which I'm still going to put out because YouTube doesn't stop me on the size, but StreamYard does. StreamYard is very cheap on allowing videos of a certain size up. So I'm going to be doing a live presentation. You're going to see me walking around code. Shock. Don't know how that's going to work out for all of us. But because I've had some problems, I have to turn to another machine in order to do this. And so I have another machine set up right now. I'm going to start sharing that screen in a minute. And and we're going to go from there. We're going to do the demo. All right. So let me do that right now. We're going to see some, you're going to see some crazy stuff in a minute. Hang on 1 second. All right, that entire screen. And is it showing up already? Yeah. So now we're seeing like the stuff that goes on forever and ever and ever. All right. So let me get my notebook out so I can kind of follow along where I was before, and make sure that I'm not leading you guys astray. All right. It's Friday. Okay. Wow. This is really not the best situation here. All right. So what do we have today? So we're going to be talking a little bit about, as a matter of fact, can you guys do this? I need to stop sharing this for a second because could you share instead the I don't know if Jan is still here. Maybe he stepped away for a minute.
Yeah, I'm
Nice.
still.
Oh, you still are? Could you just share for me the first couple of parts that we're going to talk about here? So I just realized I'm so quick to jump into doing the demo that I'm forgetting that there's some foreplay to this, if you will. All right. So we are talking about testing. We're talking about different resources that you might use. And I don't know how many of you are actually writing unit tests for Meteor or have more extensive tests already in place. But for those of you who don't, there are some resources that you can go to. Before I even get to, yes, exactly. Before I even get to the ones outside, we should talk about what we have. And there is an entire chapter in the Meteor guide on testing. And it walks through, if you can, maybe I should put mine up too so I can see it at the same time. You want to scroll down a bit? So it talks about, testing and the types of testing that you have. You've got unit testing, you've got end-to-end testing, integration testing. They add in acceptance testing and load testing as other alternatives of testing. There's also security testing that we talked about a little earlier. And there's another kind of testing that we'll talk about in a little bit, which is called visual testing, which is, another form of testing that doesn't necessarily require a test harness of the same kind. So most of the kinds of testing that you're going to care about with your code is writing decent unit tests to make sure that you have, at least acceptable coverage of the code that you've written. And so we have that in Meteor, and it's sort of built into the platform, if you will. And if we go down to where, okay, so there's some challenges here. Yeah, I wasn't going to bring this up right now, but does anybody want to talk about some of the challenges that there are with Meteor in terms of testing? Otherwise, I'm going to just leave it to you to read. Well, why don't we just head back over to where, oh, it looks like we lost one of the yawns, the Meteor test command, right? So, you can test using Meteor test, but then there's some other ways of doing it also. So Meteor test is a command line command that you can use. And in my demo, I'm gonna be using it, and you're gonna see it. Okay. And so that is part of it. Now, Meteor's testing uses Mocha as its harness to actually bootstrap and run those tests. So we'll get further into it as we go into the demo itself. I'll walk you through how it's actually done. All right. Now, beyond this, if you want to get, because we have different front ends for Meteor, some of these front ends have their own testing suggestions. And the React handbook, if we can go over to there, has this bit called a wide view of automated testing in React apps. And they walk through a learning experience that you can go through. So if you spend time developing React front ends, you may want to go and take a look at this. This may be useful to you. I don't use React. So for me, this is not that helpful, but for you, It may be, and we'll have the link for that. So I thought this is pretty good. We were going to get into a discussion a little later about why we have trouble working with some other frameworks with Meteor, but that'll be towards the end of my presentation. Once we're done with that, we'll get into open discussion. There are people outside of me that can speak better to this, folks on this panel, and we'll get into a more of a discussion about this. So that's React. It's pretty straightforward. It's a good point introduction as to why you might want to use automated testing, and it gets into the scope of React app and what's to be tested. Okay. I think it's a pretty useful supplement to the MeteorJS testing guide if you use React as your front end. There is also another guide that we saw recently. It's called The Ultimate Guide to Visual Testing with Playwright. And Playwright is another testing framework that's out there. In this case, what this visual testing is really, what they refer to is it's also sometimes known as visual regression testing, automated visual testing, and snapshot testing. It's the practice of automatically verifying an app's visual integrity by comparing its current state to a baseline image to ensure that changes to the code don't introduce unexpected results to the UI, to ensure consistency across different browsers and devices, as well as to ensure your app remains accessible, meaning different access modes, and beautiful. Now, that is a paraphrase of the language that they use. So this is not my language entirely. I've mishmashed, but there's a lot of lifting. There's a lot of plagiarism here, if you want to call it that. I call it quoting. So I've quoted extensively from this. This is from The Ultimate Guide to Visual Testing with Playwright by Mike Stop Continues is the user's name who wrote this. And one of the other points they make on this is if you really want to understand what it is visual tests, how it works is that visual tests store snapshots of your application's appearances. So what you're doing is you're pulling up an interface, you're taking a picture of it, and then you're saving it, you're comparing it to what has been there before, or you're saving it against other browsers that you might open it up in. You're checking it against a state that you had before you made a change to the application. So you want to see whether or not there are any changes that are occurring between versions or among different viewing modes, right? So it stores snapshots of your app's appearance, compares them to the current state of your app. No more surprises, no more bugs, and no more developing 3 different versions, 3 different browsers, and 12 different breakpoints. Visual testing automates the process, ensuring your app looks exactly right all the time. So that's the whole point behind visual testing. You might want to consider doing it. Playwright's a way that you could do it. You could probably also do it using something like, oh gosh, I was just using that the other day too. Selenium, right? Throwing up, your application Selenium, getting a snapshot of it, and so on. So that's the whole idea behind that. So that doesn't require you to write any code in your code in order to make that happen. You can write that as an external script. You could visually test other applications that you have no access to in terms of their code. So you're really kind of like looking at it from the front on in. So let's get back to Meteor. And let me switch back to my screen and walk through this test. So let me do that right now. I guess, is it this one? Hang on a second. No, don't look at Screaming Alim. I think it is Screaming Alim that is going to share his screen. I'm sharing my screen, and I'm sharing the entire screen. Okay, here we go. All right, and we are back here. All right. So what I have is a small app that I wrote a while back. It's It's a minimal app. And, let me just do this. PWD, right? So the app's name is Z 2019-demo. Okay. And let's take a look at what's in there. All right. We have our Meteor folder. We've got a client folder, imports, server, and tests. Tests is the one that we care about more than anything else. All of this should look like a regular Meteor application to you. Let me just give you a little better view of it. Okay. In our clients folder, we have the files that we have for our UI. Our imports folder, you'll notice that there isn't a server and a client folder. So this file, this main.js file that's there, is shareable both to the client and to the server. Again, not really that important. We're just kind of like talking this through a little bit for people that don't really have a lot of experience with Meteor. The server folder, again, has its own application file, and that will run only on the server. But right now we're interested in tests. I'm going to show you what's in that test file in the test folder. Okay, so let me just pop that open right now. As you can see, I like working from the command line. So if
Alim, can you make it a bit bigger, please, while you're
sure,
at it?
is it? Hang on a second. I'm not. Oh, you need it bigger than that? Okay.
Yeah.
How's that? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. So as you can see, it's, we have our file. I import the assert package, and I use that to check against, the information that I'm doing my comparisons, right? You'll notice here that there's the describe and the it keywords that are found in this, and those signal to you that I'm using Mocha as those keywords signal to you that I'm using Mocha as my test harness. All right, and you'll see that in a bit. We have 3 tests in here, right? We've got we're checking to see if the package.json has the correct name. The name that we're looking for is the application name, Z 2019-demo, right? So it's going to look in that file and it's going to see if it finds it. Then it's going to tell us whether or not we have it. You'll notice here, by the way, I don't discriminate in this test whether it's on the server or it's on the client. So ideally, this test should run both on the client and on the server. Over here, we have our first test in the client. We check to see if we're in the client, right? And then once we're in the client, we check to see if we're in the server. We're checking for a false condition. And if it turns out that it is false, it's going to tell us that the client is not the server, right? And same over here. We have a test to see if we're on the server. So this will run only on the server. And then once we're in there, it's going to check to see if we're in the client. Obviously, that's going to be false. And then it's going to reply back that server is not the client. Okay, so that's how it should behave. All right. So why don't we just take a look at this app first and see what we've got? Okay, because who knows? All right, so let's take a look at this. First, I've got to build the app because, as you can tell, right, I don't have my npm folder, so I've just got to do an install on this. So I'm going to do. I shouldn't do that yet. Let me just do one last thing that I did not do before, which is show you what's in the package.json file, so that you have an idea of what's happening over there. Okay, so in my package.json file, the only thing that we really care about, because you're going to see me using it, are my script shortcuts, right? So to start it, obviously, I mean, you guys are all familiar with Meteor npm run start, which is just a shortcut or an alias to Meteor run. For test, it's a lot more verbose. You're going to see something happen here, by the way. I'm going to use this -- once flag. All right. And I'm going to explain what's going on there, and I'll show you an alternative to that. And then, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to just be testing. I'm going to be just running the tests in the test folder. If I don't specify anything about the application, when Meteor test runs, it only looks at files in the test folder. It ignores the rest of the application, and you're going to see that. And then in test app here, I'm going to ask for it to run over the full application. All right. Now I don't have any tests that directly affect the application, but you'll see what happens when I run it. And this over here is, you forget that. Don't worry about it. That was playing around with something else. So those are the only three that matter. So let's get with it. All right. So as you know, I could do I could just do, hang on a second. Let me do this. I'm gonna put this on my lap so that I can actually run this better. Okay. I could type meteor npm run start, right? Which is very verbose for something that I want to do, but it's, I mean, canonically Meteor 1 will get me going, but Meteor allows me to just shortcut by just typing Meteor, and it'll build the application out, it'll run it, and there we go. Ooh, what happened here?
Did you forget to install npm dependencies?
Ah, that is probably exactly what happened. I was about to do that and I didn't do it, right?
Yeah.
Good catch, guys. Good catch. We're helping test this. My application is crashing. Oh, because I'm not hitting the control button. Okay, so Meteor npm install. Right, let's do that. That's exactly why. I don't have packages. I can't get done. Just do Meteor LM. We don't have to go crazy. I was going to do this because in my video, I just stay with the Meteor npm run syntax, and that is, oh no, that's localhost 3000, and here's our little app, right? Nothing special. It's just a page. Okay. So let's stop this and let's run the test. The syntax is Meteor test. Now, I've already set this up with my Meteor npm run shortcuts, right? So I've got Meteor npm run test. So let me just do that. And let's see what happens here. So when I run this, it's doing a little bit of building. It's gonna check it out. Okay. And now we see it tells us that the app is running on localhost 3000. It echoes back the name of the application. It tells us that package.json has a correct name and that server is not client. Now we're on the server console here, so that seems to make sense. And it tells us that 2 of those tests passed. Now I'm going to just get, what was it that we're looking at? Tests, right? Okay, so let me just do this. Let me just bring this down here for a second, because it's well, I guess I could put it next to it for now, right? But let's look at this for a second here. So as you can see, I mentioned before that this first test is undifferentiated. It should run in both places, and in this case it does run on the server, right? We see that if this runs and it's a successful test, we're going to get back package.json has correct name, and we do see that here. All right, and then it's going to try to see this. This is going to fail because it's not the client, so this bit of code is not going to run. And it gets over to here and it checks to see if it's server. It is server, and then it runs this assert and it finds that it's not client, so it's false, and it returns that server is not client, and we see that here. So all's good. But what about the client code? right? We have the browser here. So we should see the same thing happen. We should see this first statement posted, and then the other statement that says, Meteor is client, client is not server. We should see that, right? So we're going to load this, and we get nothing. And the reason for that is it's that -- once flag that we put in there. Once we run it with that flag, it runs the test and then exits immediately. So it's not waiting. The server is still not running. The server went through and hung. The way to see it, though, if we want to see what it actually would have done, is MeteorTest display and -- display. What is that? Display. Crap. I forget. It's not display, it's driver. MeteorTest. See, I was doing the wrong thing. Driver package. And then let me just pull this out a little bit so you can see it. It is Meteor testing Mocha is the package. And let's run that and see what happens now. So we run this. We should expect the same behavior as before with, with something a little more. So let's see if we get the same thing. I mean, we'd like our tests to be as idempotent as possible, right? So now we've run it. We get the same result that we had before, right? It tells us the app is running at 3000, gives us the application name. It tells us that package.json is correct. Server is not client, right? Behaved the way we walked it through before. But now we have the browser reloading. And here it tells us that there were 2 tests that passed. There were no failures. And just like the console, we get the application name. We get that first line. As I said, it should run in both because it's not differentiated. Package.json has correct name. That comes through. And then because this is the client, it shouldn't run the server code, which it doesn't, but it runs the client code. And in checking to see if it's server, that comes back false, and it gives us the message, client is not server. So looking pretty good, okay? So this is because we got this time because we did not use that -- once flag. And as you can see, the server is still running because we see it blinking here. We're not at a cursor. We're not at a prompt. It's still the job is still running. So we're going to have to Control-C out of that. All right, and now we're going to run the final test. Okay, and the final test is the one that Meteor npm run, and that is, what was that? Let me see again. It was test something. It was test app. Okay, run test app. And this one now is going to run exactly the same way, except it's going to include all the application code. So let's see how that works. So it's running. You could see that the full command, which, those nice little script shortcuts help us not have to type, pops up here. It's getting everything ready again. It's instantiating the server. And as before, we get that it's running. It doesn't tell us up here as before that, that the server is running. It pops up down here. But we do get, as before, we get the application name and the 2 correct results, as well as the 2 passing here. You notice that this didn't reload automatically. That's because it wasn't just hanging waiting for something. So we got to reload this. And when we do, we see our application, but we also see that the application is in the context of the test message. And again, as before, the two passes, the application name, the common test result, and then the one that is contextually relevant for the client here. So that, in a nutshell, is what it's like to build your application with the with unit tests in Meteor. Okay, and that's all I got, guys. So there you go.
Thank you very much, Alim, for this overview. Yeah.
I did some code.
Magic.
Well, wonders never cease. All right. To kind of finish off, there is let me jump.
So I hope that was helpful for you who haven't actually tried it. It's not that hard. You should give it a shot if you haven't used it before, and you'll probably run into more difficulties when you do some real work with it. But you could see that it's not so complicated to get started with.
Yes, and you can also then integrate it into your continuous integration.
Yep.
If you, for example, run for packages, there is mtest for TinyTest, which is the official or the original tests for Meteor.
Yep.
And you can check out, for example, Meteor Collection 2 to see more advanced testing, or any of our Meteor community packages. Yep. Or not any, but a lot of them are set up here with additional actions that will allow you to set up Meteor and do all the necessary, run the necessary tests and everything. So that's all available there as well.
I was going to say, by the way, that one of the things you do want to make sure that you're doing is, if you're going to do a CI/CD type pipeline, a continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline, it's really important that you do have some unit tests in place, because if you're pushing out to your deployment target, whether it's AWS or Google Cloud or Galaxy, you want to make sure that you're able to get it in there and that it'll start up and run. So if you're executing your tests and you're finding that there's a failure, usually you want to have some kind of rollback, so that you don't actually do a deployment that's going to frustrate everybody and eat up your precious minutes that you pay for with your host.
Sounds good. Anybody wants to add anything else here? Jan, you have been working with the Meteor testing a lot.
Yeah.
Anything else here?
Maybe I give you just a little idea of why this package exists. So we have this Meteor testing Mocha package and the Meteor community packages. And this is simply a wrapper package for Mocha, because natively Mocha picks up files and then runs the tests on its own. And you can use it in combination with Babel and stuff in order to have them compiled to the right format and in order to Mocha correctly interpret them. And for Meteor, we have this package simply to wrap this. It's like the test runner's runner. And we also had Practical Meteor Chai, which was just a wrapper around Chai, which is a different asserter you can use. I like Chai because it has this expect library, and it has a little bit more behavior driven assertion style. I really like that. Expect this and that to be this and that, or to do something, and so on. But you can install it via npm and it works just out of the box.
That's a really old package, by the way. I used expect. Expect is written by a guy by the name of Don Liebs. It comes out of the Tickle community, tool control language, and it's I'm actually surprised that it's still around. I noticed that it was listed as what?
Yeah, It's in Shy. It's incorporated
Yeah.
in Shy.js as a part. You can also use assert style, but you can also write expect
Yeah.
style. So, and there's even a third one, the should something style. It's also there, and so there's one caveat, and that is you can't 100% control Mocha the way you do it when you do it, for example, writing an npm package and then using Mocha on plain Node and things.
Okay.
You can do much more configuration, and there are also other packages, for example, testing library or Jest, which we can't even use in Meteor. At least I have never found a way to make it run, and I looked a little bit up in the forums, and there is also no one else making it run. I found no way. Would be great if someone finds a way, because yeah, it's just there are things like testing library that build on top of Jest, and it's just comfortable ways to make Jest test run. Although I still personally think that, I'm not sure how you guys think about that. I personally think that I'm much faster and much more versatile with Mocha tests. It's more open, more flexible, and in Jest, it's very close towards the React ecosystem, and you have lots of compatibility and comfort functions for React. But outside of that, it gets very clumsy, and sometimes it feels a little bit like, for easy things, I have to write much more complex tests than, for example, in Mocha. But for complex tests, there are very nice functions in Jest.
Cool.
Yeah.
I have nothing to contribute there because I have no experience with Jest. You know, does anybody use is sign on JavaScript, or is that Python?
Yes, I'm also using sign-on for stubbing. So who don't know, that is stubbing is there are other methods as well: stubbing, spying, mocking, and these are methods in order to remove dependencies or dependent behavior that you don't want to test. Usually, if you want to write a unit test, you just want to test the workflow of a certain unit. You don't want to test if the dependency works. That's part of the integration testing. And I'm using sign-on to stub out these dependencies. For example, if something relies on meteor.user, I'm stubbing meteor user to return null or something, depending on what I want to test in my other function.
Okay.
And that works quite well.
Very nice.
You don't want to test the entire Mongo ecosystem with your tests. So that's why you stopped. You assume that somebody else has taken care of that.
That's getting out of hand.
It also depends on, like, if testing those interfaces actually have an egress charge, right? Then you can build some really big builds very quickly.
There's also one more thing. There is a Meteor package for coverage, which is not in the Meteor community packages, but I'd like to see it in the future there, because it's still the only real integration package for testing coverage. Together with Meteor testing Mocha, it works quite well. And the thing is, usually you have tools like C8, which is Node native coverage compatible package. And I think now Jan can give us some nice news on that. There are even some more native options.
Before I go to that, Kelly, anything that you want to add here, or are you the YOLO guy who doesn't test?
Don't test anything.
All right. I want to finish this off with peering into the future. So since Node 18, there has been a new API for tests, which has been expanding ever since. A new addition in every version. It uses describe it pattern. It now has watch mode. It has now also test coverage. So I think this is kind of going into the future, not just with Node or as a result of Node. I think we might see improvements to Meteor testing that will be built on top of Node testing, or at least that's what I would like to see. And we can, in a way, then have more of a unification of the testing. I would say in the entire ecosystem as a whole around the official node testing. So I'm pretty excited about that. I will not go too much into depth today, but maybe in the future once we come to look more into this as well, because we definitely will have to revisit testing in the future. So what do you guys think, or anything else to add before we move to our final things?
You know, I think we may have overwhelmed our audience with all of these testing related stories and ideas, because I'm just realizing as I'm listening how overwhelmed I am by all of this. You know, I mean, I just feel like we just sucked down a fire hose of information. So
yes, sometimes the tests are bigger than the application itself. So I think that's the.
You ever get to the point where you're right? You know, there's this philosophy in test-driven development that you're supposed to write your tests before you write your actual application code. Does anybody ever forget to write their application code because they spend so much time writing?
Well, I think that people who do strict TDD are also people who, by the way, use Rust and Arch. So
what does that mean? What are you saying?
That's on the same level, at least. By the way, I use strict TDD.
Are any of you guys BDD developers though? Do you prefer behavior-driven, writing behavior-driven tests rather than the other way around?
I think I'm all over the freaking place. I don't have anything really set it. I'm just trying to experiment to find my way. I would say testing is, my biggest weakness right now when it comes to development. And it's, as you said, it's extremely overwhelming. You have so many approaches, and then you have constantly balls breathing down your neck. Why isn't the new feature out? Why isn't this bug fixed? And
but my tests
into that. Yes.
But my tests, I've got my tests. It's when I finally write my code, it's not going to fail because I have my tests.
Yeah, well, it's part of that is that they want the features now. They don't, and ship, and then months later, why is the application constantly crashing? Everything is it's called technical debt. So and now we have to pay it.
Exactly.
Because you didn't use TypeScript.
Had to get it in. He was gonna get it in. He got it in. He got it in.
And on that note, let's close this chapter for now. And
oh my goodness, yes. All right, guys.
I think it's time to say goodbye.
I just wanted to bring up, as I mentioned before, we had 3 different posts that somebody that people put up in Reddit. They're actually very near to each other. If we bring one up, we're going to see the others. But we do have some people that have been running into a little bit of a problem. One was facing errors while adding the accounts-based UI to MeteorJS 2.15. And that was posted about 3 weeks ago. And it looks like they were having some package version conflicts. And I noticed that this package version conflict issue shows up quite a bit for a number of different things. And I was curious to know whether or not there is, and I asked Nielsen this on the forums, but then he kind of said, you kind of have to debug individually. But what I want to understand was when you see a error listing that shows these package version conflicts, how do you go about what are the steps you take that you go about in trying to figure out how to fix it? Is it just changing the permissiveness of the version? Is it allowing it to be that version up or that version down, or you know what I mean? Rather than just on a strict version.
Yeah. So very quickly here with these, how do I solve this? I always look, okay, what's the top level? What's my application has currently resolved to, and then I look, on the different versions, and if it's, for example, see, it's version 2. The first here accounts base can be both version 1 and version 2. I see that accounts based from accounts out here. It's version 2 to 9. Collection extension is either version 1 or 2. And then I can see here, okay, this Cult of Coders and this Azure Active Directory are both set to version 1. So that's going to cause an issue.
Yeah.
So then I know, okay, I need to look on these packages and then of course, then I need to know, okay, what's happening is package-wise, there a major bump? Is it going to break? So usually get those packages locally, allow them, get some sort of, in this case, if we go with exact, allow them to be for both version, or add in the API.versions from, add the Meteor version from which the other version has been added. So that's a very quick fix on
Hang
these.
on a second. I didn't realize that you could specify both versions.
That is this is for packages. In the packages, if you have them, if you specify a specific version, you can then specify another one as well. Most of the times, they've been taken care of in packages with the versions from command, which is usually at the top, which specifies which version of Meteor you take care of. So usually you put there multiple versions to be broadly compatible, unless you have some minimum requirements.
So those double pipes are sort of like an or. It's
yes,
use this or this.
That's how it's going to be written out. Usually in the package, you will have to then look, okay, which Meteor versions do I need to add here to be accessible for multiple version.
I miss school.
Especially when it comes to the core packages. If it's not a core package, then you usually specify exact version.
Okay. All right. So that's how you would go about resolving this. You just kind of like go down and see, well, which ones are on this particular package and what versions are they looking for, and then see if you can just make them alternate.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Any other suggestions besides that?
Those were the two, and then it's get the package locally into your Meteor project and play with it to see what needs to be fixing. You should also look up on the GitHub repository to see if there is a pull request already waiting to fix the issue or not.
So sometimes you have to get your hands dirty because there is a package dependency that has an issue. Okay. All right. I guess that's all debugging for you. All right. But yeah, we have seen a lot of these error logs that show these package dependency issues. And I was just hoping that we could get something to help people, because a lot of times they'll just dump it and leave it up to you. So my hope is if we can teach people how to go through their logs so that they can be better, they can better support themselves. I think that would be very, very.
This was partially covered into our deep dive into Meteor 3, where we because one of the issues is this is what you are going to see if you try to migrate to Meteor 3 right now, because there's a lot of versions that are mandatory. But even then, and with Meteor 3 becomes a bit more complicated because you have many more major version releases. So
that episode has debugging techniques that people could benefit from if they go watch it.
I'm not sure how much we remember how much we did it back then, but it has the basics there.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, but they can get something if they don't have anything. Okay, cool. All right. Well, that is it for news for me this week and features. I'm wrapped up at this point. I think at this point, I'd like to remind people that you know, we're in an open source community. Meteor is an open source project, even though Meteor software, financially supports it and has employees behind it. About half the team that works on Meteor is from the open source community that are not part of the paid employee group at Meteor Software. I think that's about right? It's about 50-50?
Yeah, I think so.
I think
Maybe
so
even
too.
more.
Okay, so just a reminder that, that open source software isn't free software. Somebody pays for it at some point or another. And if you've been following some of the stories we've talked about in the past, you'll know that when it's not taken care of, when the people behind it are not taken care of, bad things can happen. And not because they do bad things, but because when you're not loved and you're not taken care of, there is neglect, and then others swoop in and do bad things. And we don't want that. Anyway, my point is that it's the right thing to do. If you are using open source software and there are projects that you depend on, you make your living with that open source software, please reach out to your favorite developers on the projects that you use, and make sure that you let them know that you appreciate them. And you can do that two ways. You can give a like, give a star, on their projects, on their GitHub projects. And if they have a sponsorship page, if they have a means for you to reward them financially, by all means, go ahead and do that. Within this community, we have members who have GitHub sponsorship pages. Kelly Copley, for instance, who works on the community packages, and you can often find him in the Slack, offering free advice and help to others. Demonstrate if you've ever worked with Kelly and have benefited from his knowledge and his time and his generosity. Consider helping him get a cup of coffee every day. Although, Kelly, do you drink coffee?
Right here, all the time. A couple pots.
You see how big that cup is? That boy's growing, or he has stopped growing because of all the coffee he's drinking. So, got to help him fill up. And we also have sponsored pages for the Yon brothers. So again, I'm not just saying that these are the folks that you should sponsor. I think that they're worth sponsoring, and I think that you should make the effort if you can, if you're getting something out of it. Every week they show up here to help share information about what's happening in the development world and what's happening with Meteor. And they also put their time and effort into building packages and working on source code. So again, if you're interested, Jan Dvorak, Storyteller, he also has a GitHub page, as well as Jan Küster. And with that, I'm going to say thank you for your time. Glad that you could join us this week. Next week, we're going to be talking about what's going on in open source as our main theme. And until then, I'll see you next week. Have a good weekend.
Later,
Thanks
guys.
again, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
And it looks like we lost a